Let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who made you feel something so deep, so unexpected, that you couldn't explain it with words, only with silence, stillness, and the way your chest tightened for no reason at all? Now, before we dive in, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. I see all of them, and I read every one. And if you love these kinds of stories that make you feel things you forgot were even buried inside, type 1 in the comments. If it's not your style and you'd rather I try something else next time, that's okay too. Type 0 so I know what to do better for you. But either way, do me a small favor. Subscribe to Mr. Alex Stories right now, because this one might stay with you longer than you expect. I didn't plan for any of this to happen. It started on a slow Thursday afternoon. Overcast skies, the kind that make the world feel smaller, quieter, like everyone's walking through a dream. I pulled up in my car, sleek, polished, out of place, to a tiny community center in a quiet Brooklyn neighborhood. I'd been told it was a good PR move. Drop off some donations, shake a few hands, let the cameras snap, smile, then disappear like always. But something about that place, it didn't want to let me go. The buildings were worn but clean. The people were humble but proud. And then there was him, a boy, no taller than my waist, big eyes, calm presence, and the kind of silence that felt full, not empty. His name was Malik, 10 years old. Said he liked dogs, peanut butter, and rainy days. Said his mom worked a lot, and he helped out around the center because he liked feeling useful. He wasn't loud. He didn't ask for anything. He just was. And the strange part? From the second I saw him, I felt something. Something I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't joy, it wasn't sadness. It was something in between. Something like recognition, like meeting a memory I didn't know I had. But that day was supposed to be simple. Give, smile, leave. Only someone went missing. And the moment my dog disappeared, I knew, this boy, this place, this necklace I hadn't even noticed yet. None of it was going to let me leave the same way I came. Before we get deeper into this story, which still stirs something in me, make sure you subscribe to Mr. Alex Stories. These aren't just stories, they're moments that haunt us, move us, and sometimes, quietly, painfully, change us. After the dog disappeared, I was ready to send security, call in a tracker, throw money at the problem like I always did. But before I could even finish dialing, Malik walked over, calm, like he'd done this 100 times. He just said, "I can help. I know the alleys around here better than anyone." And I don't know why. But I nodded. We started walking, block after block, cracked sidewalks, rusted fences, little shops with flickering neon signs, and the whole time he talked. Not too much, just enough. He asked questions like a grown man. What's your dog's name? What's he scared of? Does he like loud noises or quiet places? And I noticed something. He wasn't trying to impress me. He didn't care about the watch on my wrist or the car I came in, or the fact that someone was probably still waiting back at the center to take photos. He just cared about the dog. And somehow he cared about me too. He offered me a bottle of water from his backpack, said his mom always packed an extra. He handed me a beat-up flashlight, scratched, old, but working. She said light makes the dark less scary, he whispered, even if it's not a lot. We looked behind dumpsters, called out into storm drains, poked through back alleys where I could feel the city breathing under our feet. And as we walked, he talked about things I wasn't ready to hear. My dad left when I was 5, he said, like he was talking about the weather. He said he was going to fix the car, but he never came back. I swallowed. Didn't know what to say to that. He kept going. My mom works all day, at a diner. She smells like fries when she gets home. But I don't say nothing. I like the smell. And then he smiled at me. That small, quiet kind of smile. The kind that doesn't ask for anything. And something broke in me. I didn't know why. But in that moment, I felt safe. Not because of where we were, not because of anything he did, but because, for the first time in years, Someone was near me without wanting something from me. He just was. And me? I wasn't the billionaire in that alley. I wasn't the man with 6 homes and no real home. I was just a man with a missing dog and a boy who walked beside me like he'd known me all his life. There was something disarming about him. Malik didn't care about money, status, headlines. He cared about whether the dog was scared. He cared about whether I'd eaten. He cared about keeping the flashlight steady while I crouched beside an old trash can. At one point, I looked down, saw this small, worn necklace around his neck, just for a second. A thin, frayed string with a charm that looked familiar. But I didn't think too much of it then. It was just a necklace, right? Still, something stirred, and I shook it off. We kept walking, kept searching, kept talking, and the more we did, the more I realized I wasn't thinking about the press waiting back at the center. I wasn't thinking about the conference call I'd skipped or the deal I was supposed to finalize today. I was just thinking about this moment, this boy, this quiet connection, and how strange it was to feel so much from someone I'd only just met. It was just a boy helping a man look for his dog. That's what I kept telling myself. So why did I feel connected in a way I hadn't felt in years? It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was just there. A soft thread tugging at something I thought I'd buried. Every few steps, Malik would glance up at me like he was studying something no one else ever bothered to look at. Not my suit, not my shoes, me. And I felt exposed, but not in a bad way. More like I was being seen, really seen, for the first time in a long time. At one point, we stopped to rest near a rusted gate. He sat on the curb. I stayed standing. He looked up at me, squinting a little, then tilted his head. "You don't look as rich as I thought you would," he said. I raised an eyebrow, half laughing. "Yeah? And what does rich look like?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Bigger, shinier, louder." He paused. "You look tired." That hit me harder than I expected. Tired. Not famous, not successful, not important. Tired. I forced a chuckle, tried to brush it off. "Yeah, well, it's been a long week." But inside, his words stayed with me. Tired. He saw something others didn't. Not the billionaire in the headlines, not the empire I'd built. Just a man, running on empty. And I didn't know why, but I started to feel this strange mix of emotions I couldn't name. Protectiveness, warmth, a kind of yearning that didn't make sense. Not a romantic yearning, not even strictly paternal, just a pull. Like something in me wanted to hold on to him, not physically but emotionally, because being around him made something in me feel safe, real. And maybe that's what scared me, because I'd built my whole life on distance, on keeping things in neat little compartments, business, public image, private grief. But here was this boy, this stranger, walking through those walls without even trying. He didn't ask for my attention, but he had it. He didn't demand my affection, but he earned it. I started noticing things. The way he walked just a little ahead, but always turned around to make sure I was still behind him. The way he held that old flashlight steady, even though his fingers were cold. The way he didn't fill silence with noise. He just let it be. And me? I found myself talking more than I usually do. Telling him stories I hadn't told anyone. About a dog I had as a kid. About a time I ran away from home at 12. He listened without interrupting. Just nodded, like he got it. And I felt this heaviness in my chest that I couldn't explain. Not guilt, not shame. Something softer and scarier. Longing. Longing for something pure. Something uncalculated. Something that didn't care who I was. Only that I was. I caught myself watching him sometimes. Not in any wrong way. God, no. But in the way you look at a photograph that reminds you of a version of yourself you forgot existed. He made me remember the part of me that used to care, that used to feel, that used to try. And even though I knew this was all temporary, a random encounter in a forgotten corner of the city, I could feel the weight of it pressing against the parts of me I usually kept locked away. I didn't know where this was going, or what it meant, or why a necklace I barely noticed earlier kept flashing in the back of my mind. But I knew something had shifted, and I couldn't unfeel it, even if I wanted to. The sun dipped low behind the city skyline, and without much warning, the sky darkened. Not in the dramatic, cinematic way, just that slow, creeping gray that settles over everything before the rain comes. The kind that makes the world quieter, still. And then, the drops. Soft at first, almost like whispers, then steady, heavy, cold. We were far from the center. No cars in sight, just the cracked sidewalk, the rusted fences, and a forgotten bus stop booth half covered in graffiti. Malik looked up at the sky like it was an old friend misbehaving again. Then he turned to me and smiled. "Come on," he said, grabbing my sleeve. And before I could respond, we were running together, laughing, actually laughing, as we ducked beneath the flimsy shelter of that broken-down booth. It smelled like rust and old cigarettes. The seat was chipped, barely big enough for two. We sat side by side, wet shoes squeaking against the tile, steam rising from our shoulders. We didn't speak right away, didn't need to. There was something about that moment. The sound of the rain pounding above us, the foggy glass, the occasional flicker of headlights behind the blur. And I felt something in the silence, something I couldn't name. Intimacy. Not romantic, not even fully paternal. Just a kind of closeness born from shared stillness. Like two souls that had been aching in their own separate corners of the world had somehow, briefly, found each other. And were trying, without even knowing it, to help each other breathe again. Malik noticed I was shivering. I hadn't even realized. He tugged at the zipper of his jacket, this too big faded thing with a missing button, and draped it over my shoulders without a word. I was about to protest, but he just shrugged. "You look like you need it more." His voice was quiet, his kindness, unassuming. And that's when I noticed it again. That necklace, peeking out from beneath his shirt collar as he leaned forward to stretch his legs. It wasn't flashy, just a small, worn pendant, bronze, I think, hanging from a thin chain, scratched, bent slightly at the edges, but I'd seen it before. My breath caught. My chest tightened in a way I wasn't ready for. A memory, one I'd sealed off, deep and far and buried beneath years of courtrooms, broken phone calls, and guilt that never really went away. My child. The one I hadn't seen in almost a decade. Taken away in a custody battle that drained everything from me. My fight, my energy, my hope. Their mother had given them a necklace, one just like this. I remember the day she handed it to them. She said, "So you always know you're loved, even if we're not near." I hadn't seen it since. Until now. I swallowed hard. My fingers twitched, aching to reach for it, to ask, to know. But I didn't. Because how do you ask a boy you just met if he might be carrying a piece of your past? I turned to him slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. "That necklace," I said. "Where did you get it?" He looked down at it, ran his fingers across the pendant like it was nothing. "Oh, this? My mom gave it to me. Says it's been in the family forever." Then he smiled again, simple and pure. "She says it keeps me safe." And my world tilted. It could have been coincidence. There are a million necklaces like that. I knew that. I told myself that. But in my gut, deep, beneath logic and reason and fear, I didn't believe it. I felt the world shift slightly under my feet, like a rope I'd let go of long ago had suddenly gone taut. My heart pounded, not from fear, from recognition, from hope, as dangerous as it was. Could this boy, could Malik be mine? I didn't say anything else. I just sat there beside him, the rain tracing lines across the booth's cracked window. And inside me, something cracked open too. The rain kept falling. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel cold. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time we heard the bark. Faint, broken, but real. Malik shot up first. "Did you hear that?" I barely nodded. My legs moved before my brain did. We followed the sound, around the corner, past the crumbling playground, down an alley slick with rain. And there he was. Bentley. My dog. Soaked to the bone. Shivering. Whimpering. Pressed against a trash bin like the world had forgotten him. I dropped to my knees, scooped him up into my arms. His fur clung to me. His little heart thudded against my chest. I should have felt nothing but relief. But that wasn't the emotion taking over. It was something heavier, more complicated. Malik knelt beside me, one hand gently on Bentley's paw. "You found him," he whispered. But I couldn't even respond. Because in that moment, holding my dog in one arm and watching this boy, this familiar boy with that necklace hanging softly against his chest, something inside me started to unravel. I stood up too quickly. "Thanks," I said, brisk. "Thanks for your help. You should get home." He looked up, confused. The warmth in his eyes faltered just a little. "You okay?" he asked. "You've been quiet. Did I do something wrong?" I forced a smile, shook my head. "No, kid. You did everything right." But everything inside me was wrong. Nothing felt settled. We started walking back in silence, Bentley cradled in my arms, Malik just a few steps behind. When we reached the corner where we'd first met, I stopped, reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a thick roll of bills. Too thick, too much, and held it out. "For your trouble," I muttered. He blinked, his shoulders stiffened. He didn't take the money. "I wasn't helping for that," he said quietly. And that hit me harder than I expected, because of course he wasn't. Of course he wasn't like everyone else in my world. This kid had something no one around me had anymore. Purity. No angle. No agenda. Just heart. I shoved the money back into my pocket, looked away. Because if I kept looking at him, if I let the thought live a moment longer, I wouldn't be able to walk away. And I had to walk away, didn't I? I had a life, a reputation, a wife who barely spoke to me anymore, sure. A board of directors who watched my every move, yes. But still, a life. A world I'd built brick by brick. And now, here I was, standing on a cracked Brooklyn sidewalk in the rain, staring at a boy who just might be my son. And I couldn't even ask the question. What if it's true? What does that mean? For everything I thought I knew? My hands trembled. Not from the cold, from the weight of what I couldn't say. "Take care, Malik," I said. It came out flat, hollow. He nodded once, didn't press, didn't ask for more, just turned, slowly, and started walking back toward that community center, the jacket still damp, the necklace swinging gently at his chest. I stood there until he disappeared down the block, like a ghost walking out of my past and into the unknown. And I realized something. I didn't want to go back to my car, didn't want to go back to my house, didn't want to go back to my life. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't sure it was really mine. It was sometime after 9 when I found myself driving back through those same cracked streets, the kind that swallow rain like secrets. Each stoplight, each passing shadow, felt like a sign telling me to turn around. But I didn't. I parked outside the community center, engine still running. For a full minute, I just sat there, watching the rain pool under the flickering street lamp, watching the lights glow faintly through the fogged glass windows. I didn't know what I was doing, didn't know what I'd say, only that I had to see him again. I stepped inside. The place was nearly empty, just the faint buzz of old fluorescent bulbs and the soft hum of a leaking ceiling. And there, at the far end of the room, sitting at a folding table with a handful of broken crayons and a torn sketchbook, was Malik. He was drawing, focused, calm, like the world outside didn't exist. I didn't want to startle him, so I just sat down slowly across from him, didn't speak right away. Let the silence stretch, let the rain speak for us in the background. Then I said quietly, "I used to know someone who wore a necklace just like that." His hand froze, mid-crayon stroke. He looked up, curious, quiet, waiting. "I gave it to her, a long time ago," I said. "I don't even know if she still has it. I never saw her again." He tilted his head a little. Then, in the softest voice, "My mom said it came from someone who loved her, someone who disappeared." I couldn't breathe for a second. His words, They didn't just land, they burrowed, somewhere deep, somewhere I'd been keeping locked for too long. I looked down, at the drawing. It was of a man, a dog, a tree in the rain, all done in child's lines. But the emotion behind it was haunting, real. Sometimes, I whispered, I think about the people I left behind, and I wonder if they ever think about me too. Malik didn't look away, didn't pretend not to understand. He just nodded slowly, then said, "She cried sometimes. My mom. She never said why, but she still wears the ring." I closed my eyes. That ring. I remembered slipping it onto her finger with trembling hands in a run-down courthouse chapel. A secret marriage. One we weren't proud of, only protective of. My family disowned me. My father threatened to cut me out of the company, and I, coward that I was, broke it off. Told myself it was for the best. Told her I'd send money, that I'd come back when things were calm, but I never did. Years passed. Success swallowed everything, and I told myself she probably moved on. I opened my eyes and looked at Malik again. He wasn't just some kid anymore. He was a mirror of her, of me, of the choices we both made, and the pain we left buried. He stared back at me with those eyes, not demanding anything, not needing answers, just there, waiting. I didn't say what was on the tip of my tongue, didn't tell him what I now knew. Not yet. Because how do you tell a boy that his father once left not just his mother, but him too? How do you explain silence that stretches a decade long? Instead, I placed a hand on the table, close, but not touching his. "I don't know what happens next," I said, and he just smiled. A small, tired smile. I guess that's okay. I barely slept that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling of that rented apartment above the bakery, the kind with peeling paint and humming pipes, thinking about everything I had seen in Malik's face, in his words, in his stillness. There were no more questions left in my heart, only answers I didn't know how to carry. In the morning, I went back to the center. I didn't bring cameras, didn't wear a suit, just jeans, a jacket, and that heaviness in my chest that made each step feel deliberate. Final. I asked to speak with the director, told her I wanted to make a donation, not a symbolic one, not a check for PR, but something real, something that meant something. I wrote a number on the paper that made her eyes widen. She tried to thank me, but I stopped her. Just make sure it goes where it's needed. That's all I ask. I slipped the keys to my car into a small envelope too, wrote a short note for Malik's mom, so she gets a few less bus rides and a little more time. I didn't sign it, no ceremony, no announcement, because this wasn't about me anymore. It was about what I should have done years ago, giving without needing to be seen, helping without demanding to be forgiven. I found Malik out back, sitting on the same steps we'd sat on the day before. The sky was clear now, but the air still carried that dampness after a hard rain. He had the dog in his lap. Both of them looked content, like nothing had changed. And maybe that was the hardest part. Everything had changed for me, but for him, this was still just Tuesday. I stood there for a second, hands in my pockets. Then I said, "Hey." He looked up and smiled. That same calm, knowing smile. The kind that makes you feel like someone's known you longer than they should. "I'm heading out," I told him softly. He just nodded. "Back to your big rich world?" he asked, teasing. I smiled, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. Something like that. I knelt down beside him, ran my fingers gently over the dog's head, then looked Malik in the eyes. "Take care of that necklace, all right?" He looked down at it, touched it gently, then looked back at me and said, "Always." There was no ceremony, no hug, no grand music in the background, just a moment, quiet, weighty, true. I stood up, took a breath, and walked away. I didn't look back, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew if I did, I wouldn't leave. And I had to. It had been maybe 3 weeks, enough time for the city to change seasons again, the trees shedding what was left of their color, the air turning sharper, colder. I was back in my world. Conference calls, press interviews, handshakes, empty conversations in expensive rooms. But every now and then, in the quiet, I'd see Malik's eyes, that necklace, that moment at the bus stop when time stood still. And then, one night, a Thursday I think, I got a text from an unknown number. No emojis, no small talk, just 10 simple words. "He hasn't stopped talking about you. Thank you." That was it. No name, no follow-up. Just the kind of message that settles into your chest and stays there. I read it twice, then a third time, and I smiled. The kind of smile that almost hurts, because it means something, and because you know it's over. I stared at it for a while, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I almost typed something. I almost reached back. But I didn't. Instead, I hit delete. Not out of cruelty. Not because I didn't care, but because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is not say anything at all. Some part of me knew in that silence she was saying what I hadn't been brave enough to admit. You weren't alone in feeling this. And maybe that's all I needed. Not proof. Not permission. Just that one, aching confirmation. That for a moment, brief and blurry as it was, we both remembered the same past and we both saw the same future. One we'd never live. And still, it mattered. Some truths don't need proof. They're not validated by tests or evidence. They don't need grand moments or dramatic confrontations. Some truths live quietly, in the small, unnoticed places. Like the way someone looks at you when they think you're not looking. How their eyes hold something deeper than the words they dare not speak. It's in the way a hand lingers too long on something small, something meaningful, as if that one object could carry all the things they can't say aloud. That necklace. The one Malik wore around his neck. It wasn't just a trinket. It wasn't some random piece of jewelry his mom gave him. No, that necklace had a story, and it spoke in ways that were impossible to ignore. It spoke of a past, of someone's life that was never fully realized, of someone lost and left behind, a piece of themselves scattered in the world, and I knew, without a doubt, that it had always been meant to be there, around Malik's neck. That night in the bus stop booth, when the rain started coming down in sheets, everything inside me shifted. I didn't need a DNA test or a conversation to know what my heart was telling me. It wasn't about paternity or biological connections. It was about belonging. It was about someone who needed to be seen, to be recognized. It was about the kind of love that doesn't come with labels, but with understanding. That necklace, it wasn't just a coincidence. It was a piece of someone I never asked. I could have insisted on knowing the truth. I could have demanded answers. But somewhere, deep inside, I understood that maybe the truth wasn't mine to take. Maybe the love I could give Malik was in the space I allowed him to inhabit. Not as a father, not as a man claiming ownership of a past that wasn't his to claim, but as someone who knew what it felt like to be lost, to be yearning for something, or someone, you couldn't reach. Maybe the most love I could give him wasn't in a confrontation, but in letting go. So, I left. And I thought maybe, just maybe, I was making the right choice. I thought that, in walking away, I was protecting him from the weight of a past neither of us could change. Because sometimes, love isn't about holding on tighter. It's about knowing when to step back. It's about offering someone the space to live the life they've built, without dragging them into a history they can't control. But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. No, it hurt more than I could ever explain. There were moments in the weeks after when I couldn't stop thinking about him. About the way his eyes lit up when he spoke of his mom, the way his voice cracked when he told me about his dad, and how he said, "I don't need to find the dog, I just want to help." A kid, no more than 10, yet already wiser than most adults I knew. I thought about how he'd slipped into my life so quietly, not asking for anything, but offering everything. And in return, all I could give him was a soft goodbye. And then, that message. The one that arrived weeks later. It wasn't much. Just 10 words. "He hasn't stopped talking about you. Thank you." No name, no signature. Just that. I read it. Twice. 3 times. It didn't feel like a message from a stranger. It felt like a message from someone I had known for a lifetime. Someone who had seen what I'd been too scared to admit. The unsaid words hung in the air between the lines. The confirmation I didn't dare ask for, that I wasn't the only one who felt the pull, that Malik and his mother in some way had felt it too. There was no need for more words, no need to rehash what had passed. I'd given what I could, and now it was time for them to live their lives, without me in it. I stared at the message for a long time. My finger hovered over the reply button, as if my heart were still searching for something in the quiet of that digital space. I almost typed back. I almost let the words spill out. I never wanted to leave. I never wanted to walk away. But instead, I hit delete. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It wasn't me running from the truth. It was me acknowledging that sometimes the hardest thing to do is nothing. Sometimes the greatest act of love is to let the other person be, to let them go on without you. And as I walked away from that message, I realized that I had been a part of something bigger than myself. I had seen a boy who, without even knowing it, was showing me what it meant to be human, to be vulnerable, to feel deeply. I had connected with someone in a way I never thought possible. And maybe that was enough. I'll never know for sure if Malik was truly mine. I'll never know if his mother ever truly loved me the way I loved her. But I do know this. For that fleeting moment, I saw the world through their eyes, and it changed me. If this story stirred something in you, don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Alex Stories. We dive into the moments no one talks about, the quiet heartbreaks, the almosts, the what could have beens. What would you have done in his place? Let me know in the comments. Would you have walked away too, or would you have fought for the truth? I'm curious to know what you think. And as always, thank you for being a part of these stories.